Street boy calls 190 after millionaire father sleeps 3 days. Shocking Maid secret revealed. Whispers spread like wildfire in the bleak corridors of Grimsby apartment complex. A 4-year-old boy, Leo, had called for help, his tiny voice trembling, echoing against the peeling wallpaper and flickering lights. "I think Daddy's sick," he'd cried, words soaked in fear and urgency. But the deeper secret lay hidden beneath the chaos. Leo's father, Tom, was more than just a struggling dad. He was trapped in a web spun by a greedy landlord, Tony, who wore a smile that never touched his cold eyes. As the first snow of winter began to fall, covering the grimy pavement with a delicate layer of white, Tom lay in their sparse living room, pain radiating through his back. His unemployment was a silent beast gnawing at his resolve. There was barely enough to feed Leo, let alone pay the rent. Just a little more time. Tom had pleaded with Tony days ago, desperation lacing his words. Pay up or get out, Tony had sneered, turning away like it was all a game. With each minute, the chills seeped deeper into their home, and Tom felt the weight of despair settling heavily on him like an unshakable fog. Ignoring the frost creeping in, he stayed by the window, longing for a miracle. But the sound of the snow crunching underfoot soon faded into the background, replaced by the uneasy stillness of his thoughts. The pain in his back got worse, each twist and turn pulling at him like icy fingers, and then the darkness swallowed him whole. When Leo saw his father collapse, his heart raced madly. Fear turned to clarity as he stumbled to the phone, his small fingers shaking with the weight of the world. "Help, please." His voice cracked, but there was strength in urgency. Moments later, the wailing of sirens filled the air, cutting through the fog of fear. Officers burst through the door, their expressions shifting from confusion to alarm as they took in the scene. It was not just about a father and son. It was about a community grappling with painful truths, about the indifference of the powerful toward the most vulnerable. As Tom was whisked away to the hospital, a fire ignited within Lucy. She began to dig deeper, peeling back the layers of Tom's struggles. A father burdened by loss, a son standing tall in their shattered hopes. People began to notice, whispers turning into rallying cries for tenant rights. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And while you're at it, leave a like to help me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. As Tom was whisked away to the hospital, a fire ignited within Lucy. She began to dig deeper, peeling back the layers of Tom's struggles. A father burdened by loss, a son standing tall in their shattered hopes. People began to notice, whispers turning into rallying cries for tenant rights, as Leo's bravery tugged at the community's heartstrings. But just as hope began to flicker, the scene shifted with a shattering boom. Police sirens wailed outside, drowning out the swelling emotions. The door crashed open again, and this time it wasn't just officers. It was a swarm, a tide of uniforms, many wearing grim expressions. Lucy felt a jolt of confusion What's happening? She shouted over the chaos, her heart thumping like a drum. An officer stormed in, face pale as paper. Lieutenant, we have urgent news! Lucy's eyes narrowed. She braced herself, feeling the air thicken with impending dread. What is it? Tony, he's dead. The words hung heavy, startling everyone into silence. The shock spread across the room, colliding with the desperate atmosphere. Dead? How? Lucy asked, a chill racing down her spine. Car accident, on the way here. Witnesses say he lost control. Bodies at the morgue, the officer replied, voice shaking. Leo stood frozen in the corner, his little frame shrinking. Daddy's friend? He whispered, confusion written all over his face. The question echoed in the room, binding everyone in shared uncertainty. No, sweetheart, he's not. Lucy stepped towards Leo, kneeling, her heart breaking for the innocent boy. But as she looked into his eyes, she felt something shift in the air, a wrongness that made the hairs on her neck stand. The ever-sweet facade of their landlord suddenly started to crack. Why now? Lucy murmured, barely believing fate could be so twisted. And then, as if sensing her turmoil, another officer entered, face grim and eyes filled with urgency. Lieutenant, you need to see this. Lucy followed, her mind racing. What could possibly be yours? They led her to a small room where the flickering overhead lights barely illuminated the clutter. Documents lay scattered everywhere. Injured souls of the forgotten. Accounts of tenants, some with broken hearts, some living on the brink. And then the file on top caught her eye. It was marked in bold red, confidential. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. The words felt heavier than lead. Housing codes violated, bribery, broken backs, and then it hit her like a runaway train. Tony was laundering money through the building? She breathed, sifting through page after page. And why do these documents mention a mysterious buyer? Every instinct screamed for her to put the pieces together, but it felt too explosive, too dangerous. As Lucy pulled herself together, she knew there was something more layered than mere greed. What's this? The officer standing nearby leaned closer, eyes widening. If that info gets out... What do you mean? She pressed, a knot forming in her stomach. The buyer. If that's who I think it is, then this could change everything, he replied, voice trailing off. What? Who? Lucy pressed. But the answer hung in the air, a silent scream of treachery. Leo's small voice broke through. Miss Lucy, is my daddy coming back? In that moment, everything froze. The complex web of relationships unspooled before her, chasing shadows that danced on the wall. And as darkness seemed to both blanket and promise, a chilling thought gripped her heart. Was Tom truly a victim, or did he hold secrets dense enough to crush them all? The weight of uncertainty hung heavy as they stood there, grappling with the unknown and the anxious whispers of truth waiting to emerge. As Lucy knelt beside Leo, the weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on her chest. Is my daddy coming back? His small voice shattered her resolve. She wished she had something reassuring to say, but the truth felt like a knife lodged in her throat. I don't know, sweetheart, she managed, forcing a smile that crumbled the moment she saw the fear in his eyes. The room buzzed with whispers, tension slicing through the air. The documents in her hand felt molten hot, burning with secrets meant to stay hidden. The unknown buyer loomed like a shadow, one she couldn't quite grasp. Then, in the midst of the storm, an officer burst into the chaos, panting and wide-eyed. "Lieutenant, you need to see this, now, in the basement!" Lucy's heart raced. "What? What is it? It's urgent! Just come quick!" She exchanged a glance with the other officers, and a pulse of dread ran through the group. With Leo trailing closely behind her, she followed the officer downstairs. The narrow hallway felt like a descent into darkness, buzzing with the sound of her own anxious heartbeat. When they reached the basement, a flickering light cast eerie shadows over the walls. A group of officers surrounded a door, and she pushed through, her stomach knotting tighter. What lay before her was a sight that snatched the breath from her lungs. In the corner, beside old boxes and forgotten debris, Tom was there. But it wasn't the Tom she knew. He sat, tied to a chair, his eyes wide with panic. The frantic look in his gaze spoke volumes, more than the physical restraints binding him. "Tom!" she gasped, rushing forward. "What happened?" "Are you okay, Lucy?" he shouted, relief washing over his features. But then a flash of fear swept across them, eyes shifting to someone standing menacingly in the shadows. Suddenly the air crackled with tension as Tony's figure emerged. But he wasn't the smug landlord they all knew. He wore a look of anger, twisted with desperation. "You shouldn't be here, Lieutenant," Tony warned, voice low and dangerous. The color drained from Lucy's face as Tom's terror spilled into the air, infecting her with dread. "What's going on? What did you do to him?" she demanded, stepping forward protectively, Leo clinging to her leg, his face pale with confusion. Another officer stepped toward them, but the moment came crashing down in an explosive heartbeat. Tony lunged, shoving Tom's chair back. "You've really messed this up now," he screamed, desperation spilling out like poison, a man driven mad. In a shocking twist of fate, Tom's eyes locked on Lucy's, and suddenly the truth exploded like glass, shattering in silence. "Lucy, I didn't do it! I swear! I was—" But before he could finish, a gunshot echoed through the basement, a deafening sound that silenced everything. Time froze. The scuffle for power, the emotions, the fear, it all condensed into that one moment. Lucy felt her heart slip into her stomach as Tony staggered back, a look of betrayal crossing his face. The gun fell from his hand, hitting the floor with a sickening thud. Beneath the chaos, silence briefly reigned. And then, like a tide rolling in, panic erupted. Leo's tiny body pressed harder against her, his eyes wide. "What just happened?" he whimpered, looking between Lucy and Tom. Lucy held her breath, the horror creeping in. "Tom, are you—" But before she could finish, the color drained from Tom's face, and the world around her melted into chaos. Was this part of a plan? Had Tom been playing a game all along? Or was he just another pawn caught in a web too twisted to untangle? "Lieutenant, we have to get out!" an officer shouted, dragging her from the moment, but the weight of realization set like concrete in her chest. Tom's pleas echoed in her mind, but something deeper begged to be uncovered. Was this still a father's fight? Or had something darker brewed beneath? The truth clawed at her, suffocating and sharp, and as they burst into the night air, Lucy felt it. The distinct chill of betrayal, the hollow thump of secrets begging to be revealed. What lay ahead, and who could truly be trusted? Lucy stumbled out into the frigid night air, her heart pounding. The weight of chaos still clung to her like an unwelcome cloak. Leo grasped her leg, his little eyes wide with fear, seeking comfort. "Is Daddy okay?" His voice cracked, pulling at Lucy's heart. She was about to answer when they heard a loud thud behind them. The air shifted, thick and uneasy. The officers instinctively formed a protective circle around Lucy and Leo, facing the basement door. The light flickered above them, casting erratic shadows over anxious faces. Suddenly, Tony burst through the doorway, his clothes stained and twisted, hair disheveled. His expression morphed from shock to fury in an instant. "Ooh!" he shouted, voice rising. "This is the real game! He's the one who set me up! The buyer! Ha! He was always in the picture! A double-crossing rat!" The air turned electric with disbelief. Lucy's eyes darted to Tom, still reeling from the chaos. "No, he can't be," she whispered, her heart racing with a mix of anger and confusion. Leo looked up at her, searching for answers in her eyes. "Miss Lucy, what does he mean?" The innocence in his voice tore at her. But Tony wasn't done. "Tom was in deeper than you know. I'm just the fall guy." He waved the flash drive like it was evidence of a twisted plan. "I've got the proof. Their names are all here, the corrupt officials, the money laundering, everything." But Tom, he was in on it. The world tilted around Lucy. She had chased shadows, pursued a truth that was now spinning into something far darker. Was Tom really the villain, hidden in plain sight? Did he lure everyone into this trap? "No, that's not true!" Tom shouted, his voice strained but fierce. "I never wanted any of this. I was trying to protect Leo." "Protect him?" Tony's laughter echoed in the stillness. "You put him in danger, Tom. You think they care about you? About Leo? It's all a game to them." "Enough!" Lucy shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. "This isn't the time for your lies." But doubt wormed its way into her thoughts. Could Tony be speaking the truth? Without warning, the basement light flickered violently, then went out, plunging them all into sudden darkness. Panic surged. Shadows expanded, wild and unpredictable. In that pocket of chaos, a scream erupted from somewhere behind her. A voice she didn't recognize, but that made her blood run cold. "Help!" The cry shattered the air, desperate and chilling. The darkness felt alive, swirling with fear. "Leo, stay close!" Lucy shouted, heart in her throat, as the sound of a scuffle erupted from the shadows. And just as she reached out to pull him in, she felt a sharp jolt. Something struck her side, a cold fear gripping her heart. "What was that?" she gasped, eyes wide. The darkness was swallowing everything, and with it, the truth seemed to slip further away. Tom's pleading echoed, muffled and distant. "Lucy, listen! I swear I'm not the enemy!" But shadows moved, shapes merging and twisting, threatening to tear apart the fragile world she knew. In that moment, Lucy faced a stark reality. What if the only truth they could rely on was the one hidden beneath the surface? If Tom wasn't the hero, what would it mean for Leo? For all of them? As they stumbled, fighting to find their way back to the light, the haunting scream echoed once more. But this time, it was followed by a different sound, one of laughter, chilling in its familiarity. And just like that, the game had changed. Who played whose game now? In the heart of darkness, Lucy felt it. A fray in reality, where every connection trembled, hanging by a thread thin enough to snap at any moment. What lay hidden could reshape everything? Would they even survive to find out? The darkness swallowed them whole. Lucy felt her heartbeat thud in her chest, each pulse a reminder of how fragile everything was. "Leo, stay close," she whispered urgently, eyes darting as shadows danced around them. She could barely see Tony's panic face, but the air crackled with danger. Then, just as everything teetered on the brink of chaos, an explosion rattled the ground. The basement door jerked open. A figure stumbled in, silhouetted against the dim light. "Stop!" It was an officer, wild-eyed and panting, clutching a file. "You need to see this." Lucy's pulse quickened. "What is it? What's going on?" The officer hesitated, eyes flickering to Tom, then to Tony. "You have to know the truth about Tom and the buyer." At that moment, Tony bared his teeth in a sneer, eyes glittering. "You don't want to believe him, Lucy. It's a trap!" "Shut up!" the officer shouted, flipping the file open. "I've got something that changes everything." The tension coiled tighter. As the officer read, Lucy leaned closer, her breath catching in her throat. "There are names here, powerful ones," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "People in high places. Tom, he was working for them. He's not just some victim." "No, Tom's voice broke, panic flooding his features. "You've got it all wrong." But it felt like a storm. The weight of betrayal hung heavy in the air. Lucy's heart raced, confusion spiraling in her chest. Was Tom really the one who'd pulled everyone into this dark abyss? Suddenly, Tony lunged for the officer, desperation etched on his face. "You can't let them have it. You have to burn it." In the struggle, the file went flying. Pages scattered like autumn leaves, floating to the ground in disarray. Lucy's stomach dropped as she caught glimpses of the names on the pages. Secret deals. Testimony. Everything threatening to break loose. A chilling realization washed over her. "Is this true?" she gasped, looking from Tom to the officer, searching for one piece of reassurance. Leo clutched her leg tighter, eyes wide and terrified. Before anyone could reply, Tony unleashed a scream that reverberated through the crumbling walls. "You think I can't destroy you all?" It was a wild, manic cry, fueled by a whirlwind of panic. But then, in that instant, everything shifted. A sharp noise split the air, a loud crack that echoed like thunder. A narrow beam of light pierced through the darkness. The basement door burst open wider, and a team of officers flooded in, the shock and power of their presence like a tidal wave. "Hands up, everyone!" they demanded. The basement exploded with chaos, voices shouting over one another. In the frenzy, Lucy caught sight of a familiar figure lurking at the back. It was a face she hadn't seen in years, a face she thought she'd never have to see again. "No, it can't be," she murmured, her heart racing. The realization crashed through her. This was the buyer, the shadow she never could shake, and the truth shattered around her like glass, cutting deep. As the realization settled, a darkness as thick as smoke wrapped around her. "What have I done?" she whispered, barely audible over the chaos. Was Tom truly a pawn in some twisted game? Or had he orchestrated this all along? The tension felt unbearable. She wanted to scream, but nothing came out. The weight of secrets pressed down, wrapping them all in a suffocating embrace. Who could be trusted anymore? And as the light flickered overhead, illuminating the fear on Leo's face, a single question pierced the silence. Were they all just players in a game that had twisted beyond recognition? In that moment, everything shifted, leaving behind a question that rattled the very foundation of the truth they thought they knew. What lay ahead was more uncertain than ever. Lucy felt the weight of shock pressing down on her. The basement was flooded with uncertainty, the air thick and still. As the true players stood before her, she could see the fear in Tom's eyes, the determination, etc. "Who is the buyer, Tony?" she demanded, her voice steadying despite the fear knotting in her stomach. The other officers buzzed around her like frantic bees, trying to sort out the mess as they picked up the scattered pages of evidence. Leo was tucked safely behind her, seeking refuge in her presence. But before Tony could spit out another word, he was interrupted by a sudden crash. The basement window shattered in an explosion of glass, spilling shards everywhere. Lucy screamed, instinctively pulling Leo close. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the darkness. "Get down!" an officer yelled, shoving them aside as others moved to confront the source of the intrusion. Lucy's heart raced as chaos broke loose. She was spun around, trying to shield Leo, while keeping her eye on Tony, who was now darting around the chaotic scene, searching for a way out. "Tom, what's happening?" Lucy shouted over the cacophony, desperate to make sense of the fray. But Tom stood immobile, eyes locked on Tony. "Tony, don't," Tom started, but his voice faded into the growing roar of confusion. Then, just as suddenly as the chaos erupted, the door to the basement swung open again, revealing a figure that made Lucy's stomach drop. It was someone she recognized. "Oh, stay out of what?" Lucy rasped, feeling a chill crawl along her spine. Her world twisted, flipping everything she thought she knew upside down. "Everything!" Sarah snapped, her gaze shifting to Tom. "You don't understand how deep this goes. Trust me, you need to listen." Before Lucy could react, Sarah had a small device in her hand, pointing it where everyone could see. It glowed ominously. "This will change everything." The air felt electric as she pressed a button. A terrifying noise echoed out. A recorded conversation began to play, the voices clear through the chaos. "Tom, you know the deal. Get the money moving," a familiar voice said, making Lucy's heart stop. "It's too late to back out. You're in deep." The truth washed over her like cold water. Tom, the man she had trusted, the father trying to protect Leo, was in on this all along. "No," she whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "Tom," Leo whispered, innocent confusion painting his small face, but that shock was eclipsed as the recording continued. "And if you don't comply, you know what will happen to your boy." The basement felt like it was closing in, the walls pressing down. Whatever Tom had said before, whatever truth he thought existed, shattered in that moment. "I'm not the enemy," he pleaded, but doubt clouded the room. The crowd around them gasped, voices overlapping in a cacophony of disbelief. Sarah smiled, almost triumphantly. "See? You're part of something much bigger than you can handle." Lucy's heart shattered just a little more, but she couldn't let Leo see her frightened. She had to be strong. "You have to be wrong, Sarah. This can't be true." As if in response, Tom's face twisted in pain and desperation. "Lucy, I was trying to protect you. I thought if I got the money, we could leave." Before he could finish, the door behind them burst open again, and a group of heavily armed men flooded in, chaos erupting once more. The basement had become a battleground. Weapons pointed, voices raised in confusion and fear. Lucy instinctively pushed Leo behind her, her body a shield. A cold realization washed over her. This was no longer just a struggle for survival. This was a reckoning. The truth lingered unspoken in the air, heavy and oppressive. What lurked beneath the surface could destroy them all, leaving them in pieces. As the tension built and gunfire erupted, one thing became painfully clear. Was anyone safe? And who was truly pulling the strings in this deadly game? The echoes of betrayal haunted every corner, leaving her gasping for breath, each question pulling her deeper into the abyss. The basement erupted into chaos. Fear gripped Lucy's chest tightly as the armed men surged forward, voices shouting. The weight of the flash drive felt heavier in her hand. She could see Tom's desperate eyes pleading for answers. But as everything spiraled, something shifted in the air. A shift so profound, it tugged at the seams of reality. Just when she thought the situation couldn't worsen, a loud crack cut through the noise. Suddenly, Sarah's gaze flickered past Lucy, and her face twisted in shock. "Get down!" she screamed, throwing herself toward a side wall. Before Lucy could process the command, the basement door crashed shut with a deafening bang. The lights flickered violently, then went dark. Panic settled over them like a thick fog. A shot rang out, followed by a scream that seemed to stretch into eternity. In the enveloping darkness, a chilling whisper echoed. "You shouldn't have come here." Lucy turned, straining to catch sight of the source. Her heart raced, pounding in her ears. Her instinct screamed at her to protect Leo. "Stay behind me," she shouted. But the little boy clung tighter to her leg, eyes wide with terror. Just then, a figure broke through the darkness. A silhouette stepped into the meager light of a flickering bulb. It was not Tony or any of the armed men. It was a woman Lucy hadn't expected at all. "Mom?" Leo's soft voice broke through the chaos, confusion flaring in his eyes. Lucy's breath halted. Her heart sank as she recognized the familiar face. It was Claire, her estranged sister, once a part of the family, now a ghost from the past. What was she doing here? "Why are you here?" Lucy forced out, confusion and disbelief flooding her. But Claire's eyes were dark pools of determination. "I'm here to clean this mess, Lucy, to set the record straight." "What?" Lucy stammered, caught between shock and fear. You shouldn't be here. This isn't safe." "It's not safe for any of us," Claire replied, her voice steady yet laced with urgency. But it's time truth overshadowed the lies. Before Lucy could respond, the atmosphere shifted again. Everyone froze as Claire reached into her jacket, pulling out a small device that glowed ominously, almost like a bomb waiting to detonate. I have evidence of everything, every secret, every name, the money laundering, the people pulling the strings. It's all here. Lucy's mind raced. The tension in the room was palpable. How did Claire know about this? What else had she been hiding all this time? Stay away from her, Tony shouted, a desperate edge creeping into his voice. You don't know what you're getting into. Exactly, Claire shot back, stepping forward, defiance in her eyes. It's time to put an end to this game. The lives taken, the families shattered. It ends now. An explosion of voices rose up, each man fighting for control. But then, in one shocking moment, Claire pressed a button on the device. A blinding flash lit the basement, illuminating the chaos and revealing faces racked with shock. Screens flickered to life around them, feeding back live footage. The images played out a web of betrayals and corruption. Every key player laid bare. Gasps filled the room as the evidence streamed across the screens. Tom's past unfolded. Alliances no one could have anticipated. You were the buyer, weren't you? Claire accused, eyes locking onto a trembling officer. You didn't think it would all come out, did you? Lucy's stomach twisted. This was bigger than she'd ever imagined. Relationships she thought were firm now felt fragile. Fragile as glass. Trust splintered under the weight of truths they couldn't fathom. Then Claire turned to Lucy, the raw emotion evident on her face. You need to understand, Lucy. All those years apart, this was bigger than us. It's a game none of us chose. In that moment, everything twisted again. It wasn't just about Tom's fight for his son or the police's chase after Tony. It all blurred together in a chaotic web of manipulation, pain, and desperation. And as the basement echoed with the consequences of a truth now laid bare, Lucy stood frozen, grappling with a shocking revelation. Was Claire friend or foe? Too many questions spun in her mind, each only amplifying the urgency of the moment. And as the lights flickered, the air heavy with betrayal, Lucy whispered, "What have you been a part of, Claire? Are we too late to change any of this?" Lucy felt the weight of shock pressing down on her. The basement was flooded with uncertainty, the air thick and still as the true players stood before her. She could see the fear in Tom's eyes, the determination etched across Tony's face, and the chaos swirling around her like a violent storm. "Who is the buyer, Tony?" she demanded, her voice steadying. "Des." The other officers buzzed around her like frantic bees, trying to sort out the mess as they picked up the scattered pages of evidence. Leo was tucked safely behind her, seeking refuge in her presence. But before Tony could spit out another word, he was interrupted by a sudden crash. The basement window shattered in an explosion of glass, spilling shards everywhere. Lucy screamed, instinctively pulling Leo close. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the darkness. "Get down!" an officer yelled, shoving them aside as others moved to confront the source of the intrusion. Lucy's heart raced as chaos broke loose. She was spun around, trying to shield Leo while keeping her eye on Tony, who was now darting around the chaotic scene, searching for a way out. "Tom, what's happening?" Lucy shouted over the cacophony, desperate to make sense of the fray. But Tom stood immobile, eyes locked on Tony. "Tony, don't," Tom started, but his voice faded into the growing roar of confusion. Then, just as suddenly as the chaos erupted, the basement door crashed shut with a deafening bang. The lights flickered violently, then went dark. Panic settled over them like a thick fog. A shot rang out, followed by a scream that seemed to stretch into eternity. In the enveloping darkness, a chilling whisper echoed. "You shouldn't have come here." Lucy turned, straining to catch sight of the source. Her heart raced, pounding in her ears. Her instinct screamed at her to protect Leo. "Stay behind me," she shouted. But the little boy clung tighter to her leg, eyes wide with terror. Just then, a figure broke through the darkness. A silhouette stepped into the meager light of a flickering bulb. It was not Tony or any of the armed men. It was a woman Lucy hadn't expected at all. "Mom?" Leo's soft voice broke through the chaos, confusion flaring in his eyes. Lucy's breath halted. Her heart sank as she recognized the familiar face. It was Claire, her estranged sister. Once a part of the family, now a ghost from the past. What was she doing here? "Why are you here?" Lucy forced out, confusion and disbelief flooding her. But Claire's eyes were dark pools of determination. "I'm here to clean this mess, Lucy. To set the record straight." "What?" Lucy stammered, caught between shock and fear. You shouldn't be here. This isn't safe." "It's not safe for any of us," Claire replied, her voice steady, yet laced with urgency. "But it's time truth overshadowed the lies." Before Lucy could respond, Claire reached into her jacket, pulling out a small device that glowed ominously, almost like a bomb waiting to detonate. "I have evidence of everything. Every secret, every name. The money laundering, the people pulling the strings. It's all here." Lucy's mind raced. The tension in the room was palpable. How did Claire know about this? What else had she been hiding all this time? "Stay away from her!" Tony shouted, a desperate edge creeping into his voice. "You don't know what you're getting into." "Exactly!" Claire shot back, stepping forward, defiance in her eyes. "It's time to put an end to this game. The lives taken, the families shattered. It ends now." An explosion of voices rose up, each man fighting for control. But then, in one shocking moment, Claire pressed a button on the device. A blinding flash lit the basement, illuminating the chaos and revealing faces racked with shock. Screens flickered to life around them, feeding back live footage. The images played out a web of betrayals and corruption, every key player laid bare. Gasps filled the room as the evidence streamed across the screens. Tom's past unfolded, alliances no one could have anticipated. "You were the buyer, weren't you?" Claire accused, eyes locking onto a trembling officer. "You didn't think it would all come out, did you?" Lucy's stomach twisted. This was bigger than she'd ever imagined. Relationships she thought were firm now felt fragile. Fragile as glass. Trust splintered under the weight of truths they couldn't fathom. Then Claire turned to Lucy, the raw emotion evident on her face. "You need to understand, Lucy. All those years apart, this was bigger than us. It's a game none of us chose." In that moment, everything twisted again. With a flick of a switch, the scene abruptly shifted. Another hidden camera activated. This one focused not just on the corruption, but on Claire herself. The images rolled, showing her in secret meetings, whispers that hinted she was the mastermind behind the scheming all along. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. "No, it can't be!" Lucy gasped, hands trembling. Her heart raced, each beat a drum of disbelief. Claire was not just an innocent bystander. She was at the center of the storm. "Do you see now?" Claire's voice dripped with a bitter edge. "You were always just a pawn in my game." The room fell into a stunned silence. No one moved. The tension crackled in the air as everyone processed the revelation. Lucy looked at Leo, fear gripping her heart. "Is this true, Claire?" But before Claire could answer, the basement door burst open once more, and a new wave of armed men poured in. Taking aim, as shadows loomed around them, the truth was out, but questions flooded in. Was Claire a hero or a villain? And what would this mean for all of them? Lucy gripped Leo closer, the uncertainty stabbing like ice through her veins, as the echoes of betrayal resonated through the chaos surrounding them. The basement blazed with tension, the air thick with uncertainty. Then came the crash of the door, and a swarm of armed men flooded in, eyes glinting with determination. Lucy's heart raced. She squeezed Leo tighter, his small body shaking against her. "Everybody on the ground!" one of the intruders barked, a deep voice crackling through the chaos. Panic erupted as officers dove for cover, and Lucy moved instinctively, creating a barrier between Leo and the danger. "Claire, what do we do?" she shouted, her throat tight with fear. But Claire, eyes wide, seemed momentarily lost, staring at the screens displaying betrayals and alliances. "We have to," she began, but her voice was drowned out by the chaos. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, then buzzed out completely, plunging them into darkness once more. A collective gasp echoed in the pitch black as confusion engulfed the room. And then it happened. A blinding flash illuminated the chaos the next second. An explosion erupted from the screens, filling the room with smoke and debris. Screams pierced the air as bodies stumbled back. Lucy shielded Leo, her heart pounding fiercely in her chest. "Stay close," she yelled, her voice raw and urgent. But as the smoke billowed, a figure emerged from the haze, moving with deadly purpose. It was a woman, cloaked in black, steadying herself against the chaos. She raised a hand, and suddenly a loud voice rang out above the din. "Enough! Everyone, stop!" The chaos froze, eyes snapped toward the newcomer. The woman was oddly familiar, yet shrouded in shadows. "Claire, you need to listen. It's all part of the plan." Claire's face shifted from confusion to shock. "What do you mean, part of the plan?" The woman stepped into the flickering light. "You didn't know? Your sister has always been one step ahead. This was never just about Tony. It was never just about the money." Everyone stood speechless, swallowed by disbelief. The truth felt like knives slicing through the air. "Who are you?" Lucy demanded, her fear contorting into fierce resolve. "I'm someone who's had enough of the lies," the woman said, her voice steady. "I'm here to expose the puppet master behind this whole nightmare." The atmosphere changed, tension thickening like fog. "What puppet master?" Tom shouted, his own panic bubbling over. "Your real enemy," she declared, Someone who's been watching, guiding everything from the shadows. Someone who's pulling your strings. Lucy's mind raced, grappling to understand. But before anyone could respond, the woman opened her jacket, revealing a hidden device. This can take you down, but it also lifts the veil. You'll see everyone's faces, every hidden alliance. "Pull the plug!" someone shouted, desperation creeping into their voice. "No!" she countered, voice rising. "You need to understand. If you let her activate this, you'll discover truths you're not ready for." Suddenly, a roar erupted from the back. "Stop this madness!" It was Tony, seething, eyes wild as he surged forward. Then, like a bullet, Claire lunged, grabbing the device. "No, we can end it now!" The room erupted again in chaos as the device fell to the floor, the bright lights strobing erratically. A second explosion rattled the world around them, and in that moment of deafening roar, a chilling truth hit Lucy like a freight train. The woman began to laugh, her voice echoing through the smoke. "You think you're in control? This was never about them. It was always about you." And just like that, everything shattered. Claire's face twisted with betrayal and realization. She was never meant to be the leader. She had always played a role, set up by the woman in black. "Who are you?" Lucy yelled, heart racing as fear replaced everything else. The truth of their fight shifted, leaving Lucy breathless, trembling, as the air felt thick with secrets yet to unfold. The world spun, leaving only more questions. In the depths of that chaos, a new terrifying game had begun. Lucy's heart thundered in her chest as chaos enveloped the room. The woman in black stepped forward, her face illuminated by the flickering overhead lights. "You don't know what you've unleashed," she said, her voice soft yet steely. "But it's too late to back down now. You think you're in control? You're just players in a game far beyond your understanding." Claire's face twisted with rage and betrayal. "Who are you to talk? You're just as deep in this as we are," she shouted, eyes blazing. But the woman's cool composure only seemed to amplify the tension. "Time is running out," the woman hissed. "You'll all pay the price for this game of secrets." Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed in the basement. Shattered glass exploded around them, raining down like confetti. Lucy instinctively pulled Leo closer, shielding him from the chaos. "We have to get out of here!" she yelled, panic clawing at her throat. In a heartbeat, the armed men surged forward, weapons drawn, shouting commands. But before they could react, another officer dashed past Lucy, grabbing the mysterious device from Claire's hand. "Enough!" he bellowed, wrestling it away. "What are you doing?" Claire shrieked, desperation gripping her voice. But the officer held up the device, turning to face everyone. "I've got this. We'll expose the truth." His fingers trembled, the weight of the world resting on his shoulders. As chaos erupted once again, the woman in black backed away, eyes gleaming with something dark. "You think you can save yourselves? This is just the beginning." The room erupted in shouts and noise, the air dense with confusion and fear. Lucy felt her body tremble, the tension squeezing her chest like a vice. "We can't let her get away," she shouted, pushing through the chaos, pulling Leo along with her. "No! Get down!" Someone screamed as bullets whizzed past, forcing Lucy to shield Leo even tighter. Desperation fueled her as she stumbled toward the exit. Tom stood between Tony and the armed men. "You're not walking out of here!" he shouted, his voice echoing powerfully, but it was quickly drowned out by the roar of chaos. In the midst of the storm, Lucy saw a flicker of warmth amongst the rage, a hand reaching out to her. "Mom!" Leo cried, pointing. It was Claire again, fighting through the crowd, determination written across her face. "Come on! We're getting out!" Claire yelled, eyes fixed on Lucy. But even as they moved, the tension felt ready to snap. Then, with a final scream that echoed through the smells of smoke and fear, everything went black. When the dust settled, the room was eerily quiet. Lucy's breath hitched as she stood amidst the debris, scanning for Leo. His small hand found hers, trembling. "We made it," she whispered, terrified, yet relieved. But in the distance, she could feel the remnants of chaos brewing just beneath the surface. "What just happened?" she murmured, looking at the faces around her, now worn with confusion and hurt. And then it struck her. What about the truth? The secrets? Time to find out. A new voice broke through, echoing from the shadows. As they stepped into the light, the fractured pieces began to weave together. The truth lay ahead, but it carried the weight of all their choices. Whatever haunted them would follow, and as they left the ruins of the basement behind, Lucy turned to her family, heart racing. "Are we ready for what's next?" she asked, uncertainty swirling in the air. In that moment, a new journey awaited them. Cloaked in shadows, but filled with resolve. It was time to face their truth. Now, as you've journeyed with us through this wild ride, you must subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the time to show your support. Press the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait 1 second longer. Share this video immediately with at least 5 friends who need to know this ending. Your participation matters. Together, we'll uncover even more secrets.